right, everyone. Welcome to the Kati G podcast. I'm Kati Gostaspi. And as I always say, the mission of my podcast is for us to realize that we are great and we can be even greater. And most importantly, how can we bring this greatness to the world through a brand that resonates who you are and your authenticity? So why do I do this podcast? Two reasons. One, I deeply care about humanity, your humanity, and I want us all to see how great we really are, to be happier and healthier. And also because, just like you, I struggle with my own feelings and my own emotions of being quote unquote less than wherever I am that day, that moment. And it's just like everyone else. So some days are ugly for me, my friends, and some days are great. And I always learn from my guests. And this time, have I got a treat for you? You all know I only bring on guests where I'm moved to really bring on someone that can teach my audience and come from a place of true love. So today I've got Scott Stabile, and Stabile. You need to look him up and he'll tell you all about who he is here in a second. But I met Scott in 2022, correct? We were just talking about this. I was going through the breast cancer journey, and I got connected with Scott because one of your quotes, which I always tell him, I've got it framed on my desk. You've got so many quotes, like the quotes just come through you, and it's a holy blessing all the time. But this quote in particular is about the woman who changed the world just by showing up and smiling at people. And it's on my desk, big, it's giant. And every once in a while I look at it and I'm going, that's me. What am I doing today to do that? So I wanted to bring him to you guys because he's got wisdom galore. So Scott, tell us what we should know about you, your background, your story, and then we'll dive into your new book and your lessons for my audience.
Cool. Well, first, I just want to say hi, Kathy, and thank you for having me on your show. I'm so happy to just see you and connect with you again. So this is really lovely for me.
Pleasure. Thank you for making time, honestly.
Oh, absolutely. And what I feel called to share right now, as far as what is my story, um, is my story is that I believe in love more than I believe in anything else as our greatest healer on this planet. And I make a lot of noise for the power of love in our lives, and not from a naive, woo-woo, ungrounded place, but from the understanding that without the energy of love, healing does not get created. There are a lot of powerful change agents on our planet, but if they are not supported by the energy of love and all that love invites into our lives, healing does not get created. So that's really when I check in with myself, as I do often, um, I just feel inspired to continue to talk about love. And predominantly these days, I find myself speaking more and more about self-love. Like that's really where my work continues to take me, in great part because I really have come to understand that how we show up for ourselves informs how we show up for everyone and everything else on this planet, which is to say that when you are showing up for yourself with an open and compassionate heart, there's a greater likelihood of you showing up for others in that same way. And I suspect I can speak for all of us when I say that we're all, to varying degrees, frustrated and heartbroken by what we're seeing on our planet and the way that people are communicating with each other and the way that people are so quickly choosing shaming and dehumanizing behavior toward one another. And we all see what that creates. So, what I like to remind people is that we don't have power over how others are choosing to show up, but we absolutely have power over how we're choosing to show up. So if you, anyone listening, are like me, in that you are dispirited by the lack of empathy and compassion you are seeing in the world, I invite you to ask yourself, how are you reflecting the compassion and love that you want to see? How are you serving as an example of that which you want to co-create out there? Because that's where our power lives.
Oh, there's so much to unpack there, but sometimes I just want to put a period at the end of your talks and just let it just sit there because there's so much wisdom in just that. However, uh, I have been practicing everything you say, so I am a good example of that. But me aside, for my audience, who generally tends to be professional women and male CEOs, a lot of women lawyers, they're hearing this, and I, because I'm a woman lawyer and I sat in those shoes until I just shifted gears, and they're hearing it and they're going, that sounds so great. What do I do with that information now? Give me an example so I can apply it in my life. How do I show up as self-love? What am I doing now that's not reflective of self-love?
Mhm.
And how can it be easy? Because we're so
Ah,
inundated, right? And with what you're talking about, the chaos in the world, even if you believe this is not meant to be a political conversation at all, ever, or a religious one, frankly, but even if you are a true Republican, whatever that means for you, the lack of communication and the shifting of gears and the busyness of it all, and so we won't call it chaos, the busyness of it all for you is still debilitating. So how can we make this an easy process? Because I don't care what you believe in, love is love, and self-love
Mhm.
has has a way of showing up. So can you tell us more about what to look for and how to make it easy?
Yeah, I can tell you certainly share what to look for, but it's not an easy process. And that's the reality of growth. It's not easy, but the concepts that I'm about to share are extraordinarily simple. And for me, there is a distinction between what is simple to understand and what is easy to actually manifest in your reality. And I think that even the most simplest concepts, like be kind to yourself. That is a very easy thing to understand. But how well do we all know the ways in which we align with the self-abuse of our minds? So even though we know that we benefit by being kind to ourselves, we still get lost in these traps of self-abuse and self-shaming and these ideas that we are not worthy and not enough. So one very simple thing to do, this for me is like 1 + 1 = 2 spirituality, is bring awareness to the choices that you are making in your life and check in with how those choices are making you feel.
Mm,
And if you find that what you're doing is feels uplifting, feels like it's creating more meaning, connection in your life, then do more of that. And if you find that how you're showing up is depleting you, is feeling toxic, is feeling exhausting, do less of that. I mean, there is no simpler thing we can do than look at the choices we're making and how they are feeling. And then what feels good, give more energy to. What feels bad, give less energy to. And we would, if we only did this, we would change our lives overnight,
yeah.
right? And then I want to just emphasize again, like that is a very simple concept, but the reality of stepping into that in an easy way is trickier because we're human beings, and every human being on this planet has a mind that is to some degree insane. It is mired in conditioning and fear and insecurity and shame and all the other things our egos are mired in. So even making the most basic changes can be a challenge, and yet a challenge is not impossible. Something that is difficult is not impossible. My excitement around self-love and the whole possibility of fostering more love for ourselves lives in the understanding that at any moment we can decide to make different choices in our lives. At any moment we can prioritize our relationship to self and prioritize our commitment to living our lives with more peace, more compassion, more empathy and love, and then follow up that decision with action. And so it's always what we do from this moment on that matters the most, Kati. And I feel empowered by that understanding as well. For anyone listening who is living in this idea that they've never known how to love themselves. They don't have a good relationship with themselves. I understand that. I meet a lot of people who are in that space, and I've lived in that space for many years of my adulthood. But to anyone holding that belief, I would say, here you are right now. All that matters is what you do from this moment on moving forward. That is all that's ultimately going to affect your life most profoundly. So, are you willing to commit to self-love? And are you willing to follow up that commitment with tangible action?
Now, uh, everything you said makes good sense to me because I'm more, there's a path, right? We're either one part of the path or another part. There's no judgment on where people are on this path. I'm just more closer to what you're talking about on that path. That's
Mhm.
all there is to it. So when I am weighing my choices, I always say, does it give me inner peace?
Mhm.
And it is very tricky because there's days where I just don't want to deal with it, right? And I think that goes to this idea of, I'm sure these listeners are thinking to themselves, well, maybe they're not, but their unconscious mind is saying, I don't know if you're worthy of self-love, of having it be something that you can make a choice around. You've got a family to feed. You got to prove yourself as a woman in business because you went to law school or you have higher education and you have debt to pay off or you have to be seen and heard. And so that's why your title of your book is Enough as You Are, and my subtitle of my book is about you're good enough, right?
Mhm.
And so, how do we manage to take that first step on this journey by saying, I want to believe I'm worth it and I'm good enough, and that whatever you want to call it, there's a higher being, God, source, divine, I don't care. Somebody loves me bigger than I love myself in any moment and holds me in a space of true perfection without me having to be perfect. That whatever I do in this moment is just a reflection of my greatness.
Mhm.
How do we take that first step when we feel so stuck?
Well, the first thing I feel called to say is just to remind everybody that your worth is inherent, which means it is not predicated on any of your successes or your looks or your beautiful family or how much money you have or make. All of that is wonderful if it contributes to your life in a meaningful way and has zero to do with your worth. So we are born worthy, we will die worthy. The way I like to reflect on it is just from this understanding that every baby being born on the planet today, if we looked at all the babies across the world being born, would we ever assign any as more worthy than other babies being born? It's just not the way most of us would look upon that. And so for me, that's how I remember, well, wait a minute, I was born worthy like every other child. Everyone who dies today, everyone who passes and transitions today, no one person is any less worthy than any other or more worthy than any other. And and I don't know how to convince anyone listening to believe that about themselves, but what I can say for myself is that understanding, that willingness to recognize that you are worthy as anyone else on the planet, no more so, by the way, but no less so. That is foundationally one of the ways we can start moving through our lives with more openness, with more confidence, because the person who understands their inherent worth, the way they move through the world and the possibilities and connections that they magnetize from that energetic connection to their self-worth, it's wholly different than those of us who move through the world completely disconnected. I mean, people aren't able to see me right now, but as I speak to the disconnection, how it feels as I'm shutting
Action.
down into myself. And when I open up into my worth, it's with expansion, right? And for anyone, what I need us all to understand, as I see it anyway, is that our minds are wired to focus on these ideas about ourselves that we are unworthy, that we are not enough. And what I've come to understand is that my mind is often lying to me. as your mind is often lying to you. And it's only when we believe the lies of our minds that we create for ourselves suffering. So, what I'm playing with continuously and invite others to play with, especially if you're locked into belief of the self-abusive thoughts of your mind, is just to become a more aware observer. There is a place within you that is watching everything your mind is thinking. Well, if you're able to watch what your mind is thinking, then you are not bound to the thoughts of your mind. There's a place within that is actually acting as an observer. And in that space, I feel detached from what my mind is thinking about me. So if my mind is telling me I'm lazy and worthless and stupid, and I'm in the observer space, all that's happening for me is, oh, wow, look at my mind trying to convince me I'm lazy and worthless and stupid. If I believe those thoughts, then I internalize that messaging and I become become aligned with this idea that I'm a lazy, worthless, stupid person, and I suffer. If I just observe those thoughts and recognize them as thoughts of a human mind, every human mind on the planet has ideas that they are worthy and stupid and whatever and less than, but I'm not going to believe them. I'm just going to observe them and create for myself some freedom from those notions. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it makes sense. It's sort of what Kamal Ravikant says in his book, Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It, where it's a groove that's been so deeply made of negative thoughts. And when we start filling it in with self-awareness and slowly bringing in those positive thoughts, it works. I remember, so I was raised by a lovely mother, but we're immigrants, right? And she had deep anxiety. And so everything had to be perfect and done well. And we were immigrants, so we had to prove our worth in this country. And years ago, I remember I spilled cottage cheese. I was scooping out cottage cheese and I spilled some on the counter. And in that moment, I caught that voice. It was so mean, Scott. Like
Mhm.
I was shocked. I was like, oh my God, no one would talk. I wouldn't talk to anybody that way.
Mhm.
It's just cottage cheese on the counter, for heaven's sake,
Right.
right? And for me, that serves as an example. Now, if every good woman lawyer is listening to this and they're being a good lawyer in their head, they're going, but how do I become more self-aware to even experience that with neutrality when I'm over texted, over tweeted, over caffeinated, as I say, and I've got deadlines and I've got children and I've got a spouse that I've got to make happy and I've got to be feminine yet also show up like holding my own in masculine meetings. And now you're telling me to do one more thing. How did you start, Scott?
I will,
I can share how I started.
what I'm recommending, I'm not telling anyone to do anything, but I am recommending that and reminding that prioritizing self-love only serves all of the examples you just gave. There is no downside to it, and there is so much upside, which is to say that if you are a woman attorney listening to this, as you keep referencing, so you know your audience, right? Um, if you have to show up in a meeting in a certain way and in your home life in a different way, part of the struggle that you're likely to have is there's a likelihood, I suspect, that your mind is judging you for being too much this at home and too not or not enough this in the workplace or
Totally.
vice versa. But the invitation with from self-love is just to recognize your humanity within it all and to shower yourself with compassion even when you're not showing up in the healthiest way, even when the ways in which you're showing up may be disappointing to others. The self-love within you is just reminding you that no matter what, you're human. And as a human being in this human reality, there is no way to be perfect within it all. And as a female lawyer in a male-dominated world, as I suspect to some degree it still is, at least in the
Very much
higher
so.
ranks of
Nothing's
the
changed.
right? Like there is no way to show up in a way that is going to be okay for everyone. That's true for all aspects of our lives. So what happens? Why self-love then? Why, when you have so many other things going on in your life and you're so busy in your career and in your family and all these, why spend any time with self-love? Because we know that when we feel taken care of, when we are nourished, when we have good sleep, we know that we show up for everyone and everything in a better way. It's the only possibility. So if you are prioritizing your relationship with yourself, you can trust that how you're showing up in your work environment is going to be better for you and all that involved. How you're showing up in your home environment is going to be better for you and all involved. That is the nature of love. It is a pure, positive energy that is only of service. And so rather than looking at it as like another thing on your to-do list, which is how it might feel in the beginning, especially if you're not practiced at it. But the beautiful thing to understand is any energy you're giving to self-love is energy you're not giving to self-abuse. So I know that any time I'm spending on loving myself is time away from my giving energy to my mind on that hamster wheel, trying to convince me in some way that I am not enough, or that I'm too much, or that how I'm showing up is not this or not that. So really, 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 I understand. I love that you asked the question, because I understand that idea that I can't have something else to do, but we're doing it anyway. We are in relationship with ourselves 24/7, Kathy. So that is happening. Whether we write it on the to-do list or not, it's happening. So why would we not prioritize making that happening the most peaceful, loving experience that we can create?
And to that point, I was just at a destination wedding with my husband. And look, nothing against Las Vegas, but there's a lot of places where people go to get away from themselves. As we were walking through the streets, my husband looked at me and he said, "There's a lot of lost souls out there, isn't there?" Right? And so this is everywhere. This is not just Las Vegas. You just see perhaps a concentration in one place. So we're always trying to flee that, right, through our self connection. And like you say, though, at the end of the day, it's not going anywhere. And how I shed some light on that is, if you do what Scott's saying, if you do what I say in what I do, it makes your life more efficient and effective. So you're showing up better. And let's not forget this notion of every time you say love, what you're really talking about is emotions. And, as someone with an expertise in emotional intelligence with a book called Emotional Resonance Factor, it's really important to, to label these so that you understand the words you use for love are beautiful, but I think sometimes my audience, because we're left brain linear analytical, like put it in a category. So here you go.
Mm.
Love is an emotion. It's a positive emotion. As Scott will validate, it's the only emotion we believe exists. Um, I mean,
Well, I view it through a bit of a different lens, but
okay,
again,
tell
I'll
me.
just speak from my experience.
Oh,
It's like
please do.
I
Yes,
see
that's all
love
that
as
matters.
energy. I just see love as energy, and it's for me an energy that's alive within me, it's alive outside of me, it's everywhere, in the same way that creativity is an energy, in the same way that gratitude is an energy. For me, these are all energies that we can decide to engage with. And for me, love is an energy that is an umbrella that encompasses compassion, kindness, empathy, forgiveness. These for me are all expressions of love in the world. So I've learned, when I'm paying attention, when I am engaging with the energy of love and speaking or acting from that place, I always feel better. That is what I've observed in my experience, which is why I feel called to continue to return to the energy of love. It's not because I'm some selfless Buddha, it's because it feels good
Mm.
to engage with love. We are all, as human beings, longing to give and receive love. And no matter how we're choosing to show up, that longing will never leave us. It is a deeply innate desire within us. So I know that to be an expression of love, a messenger of love, that's when I feel most aligned, most at home, and most in joy. So I fall off the love train plenty. I'm not someone who's always living in what I'm talking about, but I am I am seeking to live in that space as often as possible. And when I do, I feel better. And
And
when I
you're
do, I
aware when you
feel
fall off the love train, right?
absolutely. And all we can do, listen, the invitation of self-love is no matter how you're showing up, you can offer yourself grace and compassion. We are all seeking to be in good relationship with ourselves. I feel like so much of what we're doing, anyone listening to your podcast with your energy and what you're sharing, they are listening to it not only to get tips on how to be a more aligned attorney, they're listening to you because you are shining light on the potential to create a deeper, more loving relationship with ourselves, with others, and with our life. That's my experience of your energy and in part the work you're doing in the world. So everyone listening wants to grow in that way. They want to come in deeper alignment with who they are. Whether they're putting those words on it, it's ultimately one of the reasons why we're here.
Mhm.
So you don't have to wait. This is the thing I think we don't understand. We tend to believe that once we do this, achieve that, gain this information, read this book, then we'll be in a place where we can love ourselves better. And what I'm recommending is why not just start there? Just start with the commitment to show up for yourself with more love and see what that creates in your life instead of waiting to do things and then deciding, oh, now I'll be able to love myself. Once I've reached this level in the law firm, I'll be worthy of that love. Just to decide you're worthy of it now and start aligning yourself with more actions and words and thoughts that speak to self-love and see what that creates in your life.
And I'm going to give some examples because I've been noticing more and more of my own examples that are very basic examples because I know my audience, they're like, what do I do? What do I do next? So, for instance, I used to be a very early gym morning person. Like I used to go like at the crack of dawn and I would work out hard and I used to think that was very much loving for myself. But I realized after I had breast cancer and I was in recovery, I'm like, man, that was just mean. Like it was good in a way, but it was also like I gave myself no grace for not doing that. So just the other morning, I was telling a client, I ran my 9 o'clock client rescheduled, and so I was like, what is this 8 o'clock spin class? Because I used to always laugh at people that would go to like gym classes like after like 6. I'm like, what are you, lazy, stupid? So much judgment, right? And all of that judgment, listeners, Scott knows this, was because I was judging myself as lazy and stupid, right? There was no self-love there. If I wasn't there at 6 a.m., 5:45, and out the door by 6:30, showered at my desk, blah, 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 then I was lazy. I was stupid. My life was not allowed to be easy. I was not allowed to love myself. So I show up at the 8 o'clock spin class and I'm like, all right, this is great. I'm like looking around. There's like a lot of people there. I'm like, wow, what are you all doing here? Where have I been? I've been missing out on 8 o'clock spin classes, right? Or just the other day, I was like, I took like a pit stop, ran a pit stop. I'm like, I'm just going to go sit there on that bench for a minute and just sit there. So those are little things that I do as an
Mhm.
expression of self-love. I remember one time one of my coaches said, what are you doing to take care of yourself, to love yourself? I said, oh, I'm going to go get a pedicure. And she said, no, pedicures are hygiene anymore. That's good hygiene. We don't consider that self-love. So for those of you listening, rolling your eyes going, oh man, now she's taking pedicures and manicures and probably massages off the table. No, 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 no. The point is dig a little deeper. Start wherever you want, to Scott's point. But look at it as an energy shift, and you'll know it's working when you're smiling more, when you're
Yeah,
laughing more.
yeah.
Truly, Scott is always happy, in my opinion. I'm sure he's got his
I'm
moments.
not always happy.
No,
Yeah,
not always. But the
yeah.
Scott that I know brings light into my world,
Thank
right?
you. Thank you.
And
And I
happiness
do,
into my world.
thank you.
Go ahead. What were you
I
gonna say?
do. I just wanted to say I do have some tangible, like practical steps people can take if they want to get
Excellent.
in deeper alignment with self-love. So one, I would encourage you all to write down, make a list of your needs. not just your wants and desires, but your needs. So in your life, and you can break this down. It could be your needs as they relate to your profession, your needs as they relate to your family life, your needs as they relate to your personal space. So for instance, if I'm taking care of myself, I know things that I need in my life that help me feel more connected, aligned, and at peace. Time in nature, that is a need. Time alone, that is a need. Time with friends, with open-hearted, loving connection, that is a need. So I know that if I'm feeling depleted, unfulfilled, or down, I have a reference point. Well, what did I say I needed to feel more peace in my life? If I'm feeling anxious and completely unpeaceful, I have a list. What do I need to feel more peaceful? Oh, walks in nature. Okay, so then you have this list that you can reference. Pick
Excellent.
one thing off the list and make time for it in that day, right? If you're feeling disconnected, but you have a list of needs, what do I need in order to feel more connected? Oh, I need, I have my three best friends. Whenever I call them, I feel better. Great, call one of them, right? None of this is going to take effect unless we act on what we come to discover. So listing your needs is one way.
You don't have to take a long time to do these
You
actions.
could 5 minutes if you
Right.
know you need. I have said to myself, Kathy, so many times, I need to spend more time outside. I'm saying this as I'm looking through a window to the outside. I literally have to take 10 steps, open my door, and I will be outside. So instead of just saying to myself, I don't get outside much, step outside your door, spend 5 minutes just giving yourself the energy of that, right? Another way we love ourselves is we acknowledge the ways we actually are loving ourselves. A lot of people listening might say, I don't love myself. I don't ever do anything that shows self-love. I think it's because we take for granted so much of what we're doing on a daily basis that reflects self-care and self-love. When
Mm,
you're brushing your teeth, your friend might refer to that as hygiene. I refer to that as self-love. I'm
there you
taking
go.
myself in this way. When I'm preparing food for myself, this is self-love in action. And why not just take 10 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute just to acknowledge this is me loving myself right now? Because everything is energy here. So the
Yeah,
more energy you give to that acknowledgement, the more energy you're creating around loving yourself,
I
which
love
sets
that.
you up for loving yourself more,
Yes,
right?
and
Oh, go ahead, please.
fills in that groove of self-hate, self-loathing with self-love. I've started doing that actually. And because I'm a practitioner of the neurolinguistics programming, I've started saying, unconscious mind, I'm in this yoga class because I love myself. This is an act of self-love. And it reprograms things I found for me.
100%. We take these things for granted. Let's stop taking them for granted. It is not true for anyone listening to say, I do not love myself and I don't know how. If you brushed your teeth this morning, you know how to love yourself. If you fed yourself, if you dressed yourself in clothing that makes you feel good, you know how to love yourself. It's just about bringing more awareness to it. And then also, for me, the great gift of self-love and what is as profound as taking actions that reflect self-love is offering yourself grace when you're not taking actions that reflect self-love. Because even just in the offering of that grace, in being willing to say, it's okay, honey, you're human. Maybe next time you'll do it differently. That is a profound act of self-love. And maybe all the attorneys listening, that might sound like a cop out. It might sound like you're just justifying unhealthy behavior. It's not that at all. It's just acknowledging that as human beings, we are not always going to act in alignment with what we believe to be the best choice for ourselves and the most healthiest choice we can make. Part of being human is making unhealthy choices. Part of being self-loving is being kind to ourselves when we do it, instead of believing our mind, which when we're making that unhealthy choice, the mind's going to want to tell you you're worthless, you're lazy, you're being stupid, you're being harmful, when in fact, all you're being is human,
Yeah.
right? And so we don't have to give energy to those self-abusive thoughts. It's so oftentimes when we are suffering, it is less about the choice we're making and more about how we're judging the choice we're making.
Say
When
that
I'm
again. Say that again.
When you are suffering, more often than not, it is not about the choice you're making, it's how you're judging the choice you're making. As an example, I am someone who can down a pint of ice cream in no sitting like nobody's business.
Amen.
This used to be something that would create for me a lot of suffering. I would be eating the pint of ice cream and I'm enjoying it to begin with. And as I'm eating it and I'm getting through the whole pint, my mind starts shaming me. My mind is like, you are not taking care of yourself. You're a pig. This is unhealthy. This is irresponsible. All of this stuff that then creates for me in the moment of eating ice cream a miserable, suffering experience. But if you can remove yourself from all the judgment, all you're left with is ice cream. And I love ice cream. That brings me a lot of joy. And so, what I want to tell people is that that is not an easy process to eliminate. First of all, it's impossible to, I believe, to eliminate the judgments of the mind. But what we can do is we can create more space between ourselves and our mind's judgments so that the distance between how it looks for me, I'm holding for those of you listening, I'm holding my hands far apart. This is what it felt like when I would start abusing myself, like I would be lost in the cycle of self-abuse, and now I'm bringing my hands closer and closer together because the gap between self-abuse to self-love for me has shrunk. I have been so committed to loving myself, to showing up with grace, to being kind to myself, that I no longer sit in this self-abusive cycle as long as I used to sit in it. Because what I discovered was that this path of growth and healing is not about changing my mind. My mind is not showing up differently. It's about changing my relationship to my mind. And that's a huge distinction. I am still as my mind is still as neurotic as it's ever been. It's still as judgmental as it's ever been. It's still hell bent on shaming me and abusing me. But my relationship to my mind is wholly different, which is to say, I simply do not internalize its messages the way I used to. I know it's lying to me. Anytime your mind is suggesting that you are unworthy, it's a lie. And if you can understand that, then you're likely to be less inclined to believe it. If you have someone standing in front of you who has consistently lied to you as long as you have known them, you're likely to stop believing the things they tell you. And yet we have minds that consistently lie to us for our entire lives, and we're still hell-bent on believing them. It makes no sense.
Well,
So
it's like that rock in your shoe. You've had it there for so long, you know, that saying that you just kind of the devil you know is better. But what I've started doing is when I have those thoughts, and I have many of those thoughts, I'll just stop and go, that's not a very helpful thought. And I just cycle back to, I love myself, you know? And oftentimes it does work. And I find that when I stay curious, I'm like, wow, why would I think that?
yeah.
Curiosity always gets rid of that judgment pattern. At least you're curious now instead of in that cycle. That's what I've found to be
It's
true,
a
right?
curiosity is a powerful reframer. And I've gotten in the practice of just being really nonchalant with my mind. I'm not interested in going to war with any aspect of who I am. It just
Mm.
creates more war. I'm not encouraging anyone to go to war with their mind, even when you're aware that it's lying to you. I just am approaching my mind and its thoughts with nonchalance, like, and curiosity, like, wow, that's a trip that my mind is thinking that about me right now. Wonder why that is. Without owning it, you see, there's like such a different energy in curiosity, in nonchalance, in being the casual observer than there is in actually owning it and internalizing everything our minds tell us.
Yeah. You know, the Course in Miracles says everything is either an expression of love or a call for love. And that's kind of how I walk around the world anymore. Like some world leaders that perplex me, I go, wow, that person just needs a big hug because everything that's happening out of that person's being to me is a cry for love, right? And so that curiosity about people in public figure spotlights that normally I'd be like, you know, like ready to throttle them or gritting my teeth and
Mm,
creating so much dis-ease within my own spirit and body.
mm,
Now I'm just kind of like, wow. If I could just give that person a hug, and people just laugh at me all the time, but that's the framework of curiosity. And it works for me. You don't have to take it to that level. You don't have to take it to the level Scott's talking about, whatever that might mean. Like if you're like, well, you two are advanced. I don't think anybody's advanced. Everyone's just doing it to wherever makes them feel peaceful and good about life and more effective. And honestly, Scott to you may look like he is a mentor, he is an expression of what we should all be doing. We all are. We all can be that for our microcosm of our community, of our world, of our family. Um, I just think it's everyone's, not just responsibility, but everyone's right to do that for one another.
Yeah, love is everywhere within us and outside of us. It's available to us all. And to be clear, my mind wants to throttle plenty of politicians. It's not about, again, I don't ever expect that that won't be the case for my mind. But
True.
the invitation here is to get in connection, deeper connection with our hearts, with the energy of love within us, because my heart is only ever telling me to love. And I'll get in, I'm like, even that person, and my heart's like, yes, of course, that person. There's no one who lives outside the bounds of love from the heart's perspective. And the beautiful thing about that, we've edged around politics a little bit. What I want to say to that is, so often when I'm noticing is love gets lost in activism, and there tends to be this idea that you can't stand up for your convictions and you can't be an effective activist while at the same time staying connected to love. And what I want to say is that you don't have to compromise a single thing in order to stay resonant with your heart. You can speak for anything you feel called to speak with, but the invitation of love is just to remember the humanity in other people as you're doing so, to stay connected to the power of compassion as you're doing so. And this is the way that we stand to create bridges with other people. It's the only way. You're not going to scream at someone into deeper connection with yourself.
Yeah.
It's not.
Okay.
Anger is a powerful emotion. It's a necessary emotion. It's a catalyst for action. And anger alone only creates another circumstance that will be rooted in anger. Anger is not a healer. It's a change agent. It's not a healer. You have to have love if you want to find your way to healing. That's my understanding of
Well,
how everything
well
works.
said. That's a good place to put a pin in it for now. I feel like I once was interviewing someone on my podcast, and he said at the end of the podcast on there, he said, I feel like we need a part two. And I said, I think you're right. So I feel like we need a part two, Scott, because I kind of want to dose this out in bite-sized pieces so it's doable for people. So I almost want to say, invite you to come back if you have time. Let
Sure.
people absorb this, apply it, maybe take some questions that would come in organically from people and have you
Absolutely.
back on if you're willing to, because boy, we could say the same thing a million different ways and somebody would need to hear it that day in that moment. But there's so much more to say about it. It wouldn't be the same conversation, definitely. So,
And I
um,
want to I want to just invite people before we close out just to ask themselves, write it down, like, what would it look like for me to love myself like never before? Ask yourself that question. What would it look like for me to love myself like never before? See what answers come up. See what answers come up for you. Then you have a list right there of what it would look like for you to love yourself like never before. And just start integrating those things you listed into your life, not from a place of pressure to do, but just from a deep understanding that anytime you make space for anything on that list, you are going to be loving yourself in a good way. That's a very tangible, doable step that anyone listening can take should you choose to.
and we will put that in the show notes so people can access that tangible step because I really appreciate the tangible things that you listed. There's always a part two in my podcast, and I want to give it some airtime, even though we're almost out of time. What's one thing that's on your mind that you're working through that either I could coach you through or we could learn from you as you're going through your own thing, because I think it's important for us all to know that, like you said, you're human. And so, can you give us a tangible example of something you're dealing with?
Absolutely. I knew this question was coming. You shared this with me ahead of time, so I was thinking about it. And for me, I would say a consistent struggle for me is generating enough income from the offerings that I have. I feel like I have a wonderful response to my work in general and have for years, to my writing and my talks, and get a lot of great feedback and messages from people. And then what I notice is when I have, and so I had a lot of, predominantly what I've shared has been free for everybody. And and then when I attach a price tag to the offerings, what I notice is that I'm not getting the the crowds that I would hope to get, given the response I get to the stuff that I put out there in the world, right? And I'll give it as a concrete, maybe a more tangible example of this would be I have a Substack newsletter. It's called Bigger Love. Substack's a writing platform for people who don't know, and I've got more than 5,000 people following that newsletter, and of those, 70 are paid subscribers. So it's a very small percentage who have decided to actually pay for the newsletter, even though I get really nice feedback from people who are reading it. And the subscription price is just $5 a month or $50 a year. So I understand that for some that actually is a stretch, but I suspect that for most of my readers, it's not about that they can't afford $5 a month. And also there are so many things out there asking for us to pay. So I understand the very human thing. If something's coming at you for free, why would you pay for it? Especially if you're paying for a whole host of other things. And at the same time, I want to feel like my offerings do incentivize people to support me in a financial way and not just to engage because it's free.
It's a great question you ask. I think it's one that calls upon all of us to look at ourselves and our value with respect to coins and papers called money, right? That's
Yeah.
out there. And because I know your work so well, and I've taken your classes and I've interacted with you in your books, you're right. There is absolutely no reason why more people should not be just going gangbusters, signing up for everything and paying for everything. What I'm getting is for you to look at what I looked at a long time ago, which was I had this belief when I stopped practicing law. See if this resonates with you. That, okay, now that I'm no longer a quote unquote practicing lawyer, and I don't need to be making a lot of money, but now that I'm going down the spiritual path, whatever that meant, right? I am meant to be wise and God's expression. And for me, that translated into, oh, you can't charge. You have to be like this selfless Sherpa, or not Sherpa, I don't know what the word is. You know what I'm talking about. Like
Yeah.
somebody out there who's doing holy work and that doesn't have a monetary price tag to it. That's the vibe I'm getting from your statements, because you're also qualifying and justifying. I know plenty of people. I was actually somewhere where this woman had a giant coffee beverage, which had to have cost $8. And she was telling her friend on the phone how she was literally saying it. She said, I have to make less than X amount of money to stay on welfare assistance, government assistance, because if I make more, then I lose my government assistance. So she said, so I can't take that job. And I was just sitting there listening, and I wasn't judging her, but I was watching her drink this like $8 cup of coffee. So people have it, they choose to spend it a certain way. And I would want you to really reflect on, where in your past did somebody tell you that to do the work that you do and I do, that's a reflection of the real spirit of love, and really the beauty of, I'm just going to use the word God, God's word, means that we have to be humble and not charge our real fair value, because then that would reduce the significance of it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. That is certainly something that I've looked at throughout my career because I definitely held true to those beliefs. I don't not as much now, but that was definitely a sticking point for me. And perhaps because it's coming up for you in this way, maybe subconsciously it still is more than I realize.
Yes, it is. And that's exactly what I was going to next. You know, I do this process called breakthrough sessions, and we look at what the unconscious mind really believes. And so you and I can clear it out of our conscious all we want until we go back into the depth of whatever that we call it the root cause caused that moment when you had a connection between the emotional value and an event around money that made you believe a certain way. And it doesn't have to be an SEE, a significant emotional event. It's just the root cause event. And that your unconscious mind keeps pulling forward because it's trying to keep you safe. And so there's no way to logically look at that. It's just
Yeah.
ingrained and it's tripping up that metrics. But for now, you've got all the tools. I would just say so many people are missing out. So many people are missing out on your wisdom. And more than ever, we need that. So really sit with how can you tap into your unconscious event around that and
Okay.
the
Yeah.
pain around that. And you know, I have used breakthrough sessions, of course, but EMDR is wonderful for that. Eye movement desensitization. Truly, it just breaks up everything and it just clears the energy around it. Otherwise, look at all the platforms that you're on too. And I think you could advertise more. I think you could show up more places.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because thank you for all these reflections. They're very helpful. But I'm laughing because I was talking to my buddy who's in this field and doing quite well. And I was giving him all these like potential spiritual reasons that people aren't showing up and did it. He's like, dude, you're a terrible marketer. It's just your marketing. You just need to market more and better. And I laugh because I'm like, I do believe, I think there's value in looking at the spiritual aspects of everything, but
But it's just
sometimes it
raw
really is a
marketing.
practical thing too of like,
But I think they're both linked, right? I'm a good marketer. And so that's why I brought both up because I think there's a link. You know, I'm always working on my central nervous system can handle me being seen and heard,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
That's a spiritual component, but it also then says I can take the next step on marketing myself.
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Talking about the
absolutely.
book without like going, oh, I hope you don't think I'm trying to force you to buy the book. Yeah,
Exactly.
buy the fucking book. You know,
Exactly.
I had a
Buy the
girlfriend the other
fucking
day
book.
say to me, the other day I was throwing a birthday party for my husband, and one of my girlfriends comes up and she goes, I'm in the middle of all this riffraff. She goes, hey, how come you're looking so great and you're looking even thinner and you're like glowing and you look happier? She goes, what are you doing? And I said, I put it all in the fucking book. Go read the goddamn book. I just curse when it's so appropriate, right? Pardon me to the audience who does not like that, but just, it merits it. And she literally pulls out her phone and she clicks the button. She goes, I just bought it. I said, good for you, right? Because like I put
Yeah,
it in the book so you all
exactly.
do it yourself at your own pace. And so why aren't you out there telling everyone about this fabulous book? And that's exactly where I want to end this hopefully step one, part one of this podcast. So tell us all about your book and where they can find it. I know it's not your first book, it's your fourth book.
Well, it depends. I wrote a bunch of kids' books years ago too, but in this world, I would say it's my third book in the kind of self-growth, personal development space. Yeah. And it's called Enough as You Are. And the one prior is called Big Love, which only recently just came out on paperback. So they're both available. Enough as You Are is a collection of short prose. So each page you can turn to, and there's just an offering of wisdom that you can reflect on through the day. And it's all under the umbrella of like deeper self-love and how do we get in touch with ourselves in a more loving way. And then Big Love is they're longer essays, personal essays. It's a memoir, and it's each chapter is themed. So one chapter focuses on shame, one on being with grief, one on forgiveness, and it's using stories from my life where I really felt off center and how I found my way back. So yeah, please pick up the books and find me on Substack, which is just
Beautiful.
scottstabile.substack.com.
Or how I like to find you is scottstabile.com. right?
Yeah, it's a super
Substack.
basic website, but you can find me there too and see
It's
my
a
events.
great website. Yeah. And then that leads you to Substack.
Yeah.
So look, everything he said, please go find Scott. And Scott, everything you said should be you really reflecting that, oh my gosh, all this is in this book and people can use it and do this for themselves. And I'm the conduit. So you better get out there and market more.
All right.
We all need
Thank you.
more love in our world. So if people want to get a hold of you, is there any way to get a hold of you besides the website? If they have questions?
That would be the way, or
Okay,
through
perfect.
Substack. You can send emails through there as well. Yeah, I'm pretty
Perfect.
easy to find if you just search.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. I hope you took the time to enrich your own life. If there's one podcast of mine you listen to this year, I hope it's this one. Share it, please, with other people. The profound shifts, even if you take one little bit of something here that Scott so wisely shared with you and implemented in your life, we will see huge shifts in the world. Because when I shift, you shift. And the resonance of that is pure science. It's frequency. You up level, the rest of us up level. And that does not require you doing anything so big and onerous that it blows your mind or takes your breath away. I want to give a big thank you for Scott Stabile for taking time to share his wisdom, his grace, his profound experiences that he puts together with such love for his audience, for all of us. We would all do well just to read anything that he puts out there because it moves the world. And for that, I'm grateful. And any last words, Scott, before we roll off the air?
Just deep thanks to you, Kati, and to everyone else. You are worthy as you are. You are enough as you are. And you are so very loved just as you are.
Amen. No better words to end this on. This is Kati Gostaspi with the Kati G podcast. Go out there, find your brand, find your flavor, do what makes you happy, make the world a better place just by being you authentically. And until next time, Kati G out.